So it's been a wild week on Twitter for discourse. I'm sure you guys have all seen. I actually managed to avoid wading into it because it was just so intensely ridiculous and a waste of time.
But you didn't want to weigh in on whether or not we should be fucking our cousins and dead bodies?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Why?
not.
Why, Ashley? That makes you the freak, by the way. That makes you the weirdo.
What's wrong with you?
It means that you believe in eugenics, Ashley. That's what it means.
And didn't someone say to you, Angie, that you have no credibility if you're not willing to debate these things philosophically?
Yeah, and I was like, it's not my credibility that I'm worried about, mate. You're the one who was talking about fucking corpses on Twitter. Like, fucking.
Here's my question. Let's say you are a visible leftist. Like, they're always like chiding us about talking about class and about how we're not, talking about the right things. We should be talking about other things. I want to know what some fucking normal person who's like worried about paying their rent that month, they see some leftist like going, yeah, I'm really pissed off about these people not saying that incest and necrophilia is okay. Like, what the fuck does that person look at us and go like...
I've made this point before, but it's like the left is turning into this caricature of what the alt-right think we are. Like, like I've said it before, like leftists are turning into leftists in Stone Toss cartoons. Like, basically the pretend fake leftist that is there to make the left look bad in comparison to
they say, like,
the right. And it absolutely, like, imagine how devastating it would be if that discourse, screenshots of that discourse were like went mainstream, like on Facebook or
Yeah, exactly.
Yep,
That's what I'm fucking thinking about.
yep.
And the thing is these are people who get attention.
Yeah.
It's likely that someone screenshotted this.
Yeah, and you know what, like, they say, if you're not willing to discourse this, then, you have no place in leftism, whatever. I feel like, that is very much bullshit, because what we should be thinking about with leftism, considering that we're not mainstream yet at all, is optics a lot of the time. And what is worse optics than debating whether or not we should be able to fuck dead bodies?
And children, too.
To the average person, that is revolting, and it's not something they're even willing to entertain.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter why either. Like, there's a lot of people, they're like, well, listen, here's the thing. The most important thing is that we need to outline exactly what we're talking about here. If you're grossed out by this, it's fine. But if you're talking about it from the perspective of, genetics or whatever, that's eugenics. It's like, no, none of that shit fucking matters. You talk to any person off the fucking street and you say, hey, what do you think about fucking your cousin or a dead body? They're going to be like, why did you ask me that? What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
I think that these people are basically like the end stage of this kind of weird individualist kind of like neoliberal logic. And that's kind of like what's allowed them to go down the rabbit hole of really unnecessary topics that don't actually mean anything to anybody who like is, actually interested in like material issues. It's more just this weird like internal navel gazing, forever unpicking and analyzing and, deconstructing, rather than trying to be constructive with some form of ideology and construct new forms that are going to help people and be edifying for people, not just materially, but also in terms of like psychology and but also in terms of psychologically and in terms of, just general feelings of empowerment. It's all about like deconstruction and wasting a lot of mental energy on things that don't actually fucking matter. And I guess the reason why I chastise it is because I want to scream loudly that these people don't represent the left. to any like onlookers. You know, like I want to scream loudly that these people are crazy and they don't represent the left, and you're not a eugenicist for being against incest, and you're not fucking a horrible, terrible fascist for thinking it's not okay to like fuck corpses or children. And because that was another thing they were trying to do, was sort of talk about kind of libertarian age of consent bullshit. And yeah, it's just weird. And
it's like, where does this shit come? Like, what the is that like the inevitable like place where an internet movement lands? Like, I want to know, like, does an internet movement get popular and then they realize, you know, we can't get anything real done?
Well, like, look at
Can
who
we at
these
least
people...
bitch about fucking kids?
What happened is that Bernie dropped out, and we went from being like, we just want healthcare to, should we be able to fuck dead bodies in months? That's how short it took for the left to just completely disintegrate without having a singular goal in mind.
But look at who these people are, though, because these people are usually like fail sons, like PMC fail sons, like the children of like the professional managerial class who went to like fancy universities and have like philosophy degrees, and they didn't really do anything but like stay home in their parents' basement, but they were told their whole lives that they were these mental giants and these philosophical, you know, wonder boys and girls or whatever. And like, they then go on Twitch and then they have this like endless audience of sycophants being like, oh my God, such logic, much wonderful. Oh my God. And they buy into their own shit. So they're like, yeah, I can philosophically justify anything and in order to create edgy takes. Look at me. Is this not politics?
Do you think they're doing this for the challenge?
Yeah, it's like a postulation of like, look at how fucking wonderful and clever. Aren't I a good boy? I can justify pedophilia.
I'm such a good arguer.
Yeah.
I can make people okay with fucking kids.
Yeah, literally.
It's like, it's just like an unfunny stand-up bit. It's an unfunny stand-up routine. So like, it's a tactic to use to like go out and say something absolutely crazy and outrageous, and then like, oh, but whoa, let me back up, and this is why, and then you make the joke from there. But there's no joke. It's just, this is a fucking stupid thing, and let me intellectualize it to you for 5 minutes, and there's no punchline. And at the end of the day, you're just like, so now I'm like, now I think that you want to fuck your cousin in a dead body. Is one hell of a party, my dude.
Catch Jesus. That's what my mom would say. Catch Jesus.
Me and Peter once watched this awful Netflix special of one of those like edgy, dark comedians. And I mean, to his credit, the audience were loving it for some fucking reason. But it was literally just like dead babies and like the audience. But that is it though. That's literally what this Twitch like fucking weird cabal people are. They're like, yeah, fucking necrophilia, man. And they're all like, woo! He had this fucking smug look on his face every time he finished it.
Yeah, he was just like, he just knew that they were all fucking ready for it.
But that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing, though. This like weird Twitch cabal, that's like their whole shtick. Is it's like, oh my God, dead babies. Oh, necrophilia. And their audiences are like pinching their nipples in excitement, just like fucking getting off on it.
They start combining them. They're like, necrophilia, but they're underage.
Yeah, literally. And it's like fucking, it's like, they're like Caligulas. They're like mini Caligulas, in my opinion. Because Caligula, they have the fucking arrogance of like Roman emperors, all of them. And Roman emperors were all into fucking incest and like child fucking and all of that crazy shit. And I think that's what these people think communism is like everyone gets to be Caligula. We're all just temporarily.
Everyone gets what they want. That's what it is.
Yeah, we're all just temporarily embarrassed Caligulas, and we basically just need to allow the market. We need to basically, we need to mold the market to suit whatever our deepest, most individualistic desires are. It's kind of like a neoliberal utopianism. That's kind of what they think socialism is, which is why I'm always super like skeptical when I hear people going around yelling luxury gay space communism or whatever, because really and truly what they're talking about is like a neoliberal utopia where they get to stay in their like weird little atomized Oedipal room where all of their weirdest
holodeck.
weird impulses are catered to, and where they can sort of explore all of the weird crevices, the weird dusty ass crevices of their dusty ass minds, and try and find ways of normalizing injustice.
It's just basically going to be like the big ship on Wall-E, but everyone can buy a new furry suit instead of a different coloured like onesie or whatever.
I think it's people who think that like when communism happens, they can just let their shadow selves run wild and like all their deepest like disgusting sexual fetishes will be 100% acceptable. And you know what, like, from a personal standpoint, I don't really give a shit if two consensual related people have a sexual relationship, but I also don't want to be debating it or making it some kind of fucking...
The thing is, I never said that I thought that it should be illegal. Like, there's obviously like ethical... Yeah. I never said that, but people were like yelling at me as if I said that. And I was also making fun of the fact that they were even having this fucking stupid conversation in the first place. And also insisting that anybody who didn't deserve to be in the left, and also believed in eugenics because they had an anti-incest stance or whatever, which is just absolutely insane and completely ludicrous and totally off the wall. But yeah, if we're going to have the fucking conversation, then yeah, I definitely think there should be
It's just like I said, like, people are going to do that kind of shit whether you like it or not. And I'm not here to like fucking police people's bedrooms. I don't want to do that. I just don't think that this is a real political issue.
I'll tell you now that legally you have to make sure that no one's fucking dead bodies, because coronavirus 2 will come up and eat your ass before you even fucking know
Coronavirus 2 Electric Boogaloo.
It will be Coronavirus 2 Electric Boogaloo if you go around fucking dead bodies. Okay? There's a reason we don't do this shit.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, a lot of that taboo actually does come from the fucking plague era, does it not? Am I fucking insane?
Also to do with the fact that they're dead, and that's not hot at all. Like, who the fuck?
There's
such a thing as sexuality that is pathological in that regard. I mean, if you are getting off, a lot of people who are into that kind of shit are getting off because it's inanimate. They're getting off because it's something that cannot really express itself or have agency in that regard. And that kind of sexuality isn't always harmful, but it definitely can be. And I mean, yeah, it's weird. And also, I'm allowed to think that things are sexually weird.
And you know what? You're allowed to think that like normal things are weird.
Yeah. And I also think it's weird that like, this sort of discourse tends to be around like getting rid of stigma and shame for everything. And I'm like, socialism isn't here to get rid of shame and stigma.
Yeah, no.
That's not what it's for. That's not what leftism is about.
We're about resolving the contradictions in society that allow you
not the contradictions inside your head about
agency and freedom.
Yeah. We're not here to resolve the contradictions inside your head about like your weird shit. That's like
Exactly. It's not about your individual hangups.
Yeah, that's
It reminds me of this case in Germany where a guy that was into like cannibalism, I guess, like he found someone online who consented to being killed by him and then being eaten by him. Like that, the guy was totally into it. He wanted to be killed and eaten, whatever. And it's like, you know, it's really strange. It's weird because I mean, like, where do you even start with that? Like, I mean, because when someone's dead, they can't really consent anymore.
It's consented before death. It's a written contract. I'm sorry. It's two consenting adults.
Hannibal Lecter.
In that case, that's very interesting because it was like a guy that wanted to basically commit suicide, but then he felt like committing suicide would essentially be too messy, like cutting his wrists or, you know, whatever. It would just be nasty. So, like, he felt like he could be of use to someone in some other way that wasn't just your conventional, like, oh, I donate my body to science or whatever. So, he found this fucking guy, and then he had a little nibble. And I think that it's okay.
A cheeky nibble.
I think that if you've had, you know, the conversation beforehand, you've got a written contract.
No.
You know, if you wanted some Jakey bacon and I'd contractually signed that,
Jakey
then
Bacon.
I would fucking go. I'd let you have it. I wouldn't judge you for it in the afterlife either.
I'm not a sick fuck. I'm not interested. And if you want to eat people, then you're a sick fuck. Like, cannibalism is like one of the like few like proper human taboos that we actually have. Like, fucking get away from me. Get away from my children.
This is going to be the next stage. This is going to be the next stage of late capitalism, okay? It's going to be people selling their meat to cannibals after they die for money for their children. Bang. That is going to be some next level Blade Runner shit. So, like, I will
good
be.
enough for the hero in Snowpiercer, it's good enough for me. That's what I'm gonna
this
say.
is my thing. I feel like the internet and shit atomizes people from experience. Like, people are so removed from experience that these novel ideas sound kind of interesting to them. They're like, oh, I would try a spot of cannibalism. I would try a spot of bestiality. But if the prospect was actually presented towards you IRL, you would feel revolted by it. Like, if you went somewhere and you saw human meat in front of you, you would have some kind of disconnect in your empathy, just your natural kind of empathy, to feel like, oh yeah, that looks like a snack right there. Like, cannibalism is like a visceral taboo, and to think that you have the internal wherewithal to break such a visceral taboo, like, we should do it. Come to London. We'll try.
If it was like mince or like bacon,
Exactly.
I don't think I would care. I don't.
You're not gonna. No. It's not even that you're not gonna care. It's that you're not even gonna fucking
You're not gonna know.
Like, you're not gonna even know.
What is this Sweeney Todd fucking?
But you know what I think this is? It's just these very online, quote unquote lefty people. It's just their fucking next phase of quarantine. It's just they've watched too much incest porn on Pornhub. They've gone down the rabbit hole too long. They've ended up in some weird forums, and now they're intellectually debating whether they'd fuck a dead body or not. And it's because they've not, like, seen anyone or fucked other human being in like 7 or 8 months. So it's just kind of the effects of this sort of thing. And with that, hello, welcome to Low Society.
Yes.
Swiftly moving on.
We like to debate intellectually the things that matter here. Fucking dead bodies, fucking your sisters, fucking your cousins. This is all a way of making a healthy left. Okay. If you got an extra $5 or whatever, go and chuck it in the Patreon, and you can join us on Discord and play games with mostly me and sometimes the others as well, but it's all good fun. And get a whole bonus extra episode. If you give us 5 stars, I'll come to your house and personally rub your feet. That's a promise. Just leave your address.
It's a quarantine promise.
With the 5-star review, leave your address and we'll make it happen somehow. Like, I don't know. Don't just
in brackets gone sexual.
Yeah.
Just have a little faith, okay? Have a little faith. That's all I'm saying.
Well, speaking of weird fringe lunatic shit that's going on, QAnon is something that we've been wanting to talk about quite a lot on this podcast, but just haven't really found the right avenue to discuss it. But a few weeks ago, I found this really interesting article about evangelical pastors being in a panic about the fact that, flocks of their congregation, like floods and floods of their congregations, are now leaving the evangelical church because they've discovered QAnon online. And the really interesting thing about this is it started to really ramp up during quarantine, because obviously a lot of churches have closed down and the normal guidance and, community that they get from the church is no longer available. So a lot of them are just sort of falling down into these QAnon rabbit holes. And the thing is, QAnon is now directly competing with the evangelical church. And the evangelical church is crazy enough as it is. Yeah. But now QAnon has come along, and because of their high emphasis on end times kind of eschatological prophecy, and also and other kinds of prophecies too, like on July 20th Trump will wink and nod and that means that he's arrested Hillary Clinton. Like, they have like all these like weird all these like weird prophecies and stuff. It's really sort of attractive because it's like evangelical kind of theology on steroids. I think
it's because they've replaced God in their head with Trump. Like, they view Trump as like their new savior. And like, you can see that so plainly, like living in the US, when you see Trump supporters who have like spray painted their car with like Trump's face, or like they have massive flags hanging off of their trucks. And, you know, I've never seen like anything like that with a politician in my life.
No.
There's this piece of art I saw today, which is Trump on a cross.
Oh my god!
And you know how above Jesus has that little scroll that says INRI?
Yeah.
Instead of that, it said MAGA.
That's so blasphemous. That's like satanic.
This is the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life.
That is so satanic.
But it's
That's
wonderful,
fucking...
and I want it. And if I had $7,500, I would purchase it off of eBay right now.
Like Trump could literally say like tomorrow in a speech, "I was sent by God," and while there would be like a lot of people that would be like, haha, there would be a large amount of his fan base, I'm not even kidding, like no joke, that would be like, well, 100% believe that.
That's the thing.
They already do.
That's the thing they do. Like, that's the thing I was going to say. Like, to argue a point, there was a lot of that same weird kind of messiah worship with Obama for liberals as well. When Obama, so that there's a parallel there, but it wasn't. There was no kind of conspiracy about him being, you know, basically God's chosen one. But that's literally what the QAnon doctrine is. The QAnon doctrine is that Trump is, you know, a prophesied chosen one who is going to sort of clear the world of evil kind of globalist forces.
And yay, did he come down upon us all and drain the swamp. Amen.
Oh, it was funny because the other night I was watching Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And it's kind of, you know, Coen Brothers film set in the Great Depression era. And I guess that's kind of the closest thing you could kind of come to this sort of what we're going through right now in terms of like economic crisis and everything else. And like a large part of that is this fraudulent Bible salesman. And at the time, he's saying the same thing, like, oh, people are mighty fervent because of the Great Depression and all this kind of shit. And you're just like, oh shit, this isn't anything new. And this was just literally because the fucking churches are shut and you've got all of this crisis happening. Everyone, like, not everyone's kind of, this is what hits me because I'm super fucking secular. I grew up my parents are super fucking secular. Like, faith and like religion is like it was not even a topic of conversation in my house. Like, just not a thing.
Either.
So sort of if you don't come from that sort of background or even think about it, you don't even really realize that service is missing and what that was doing for some people. And yeah, just the kind of that, it's just another one of those things that you could have predicted with the pandemic, but it's just one of the factors that I think you just couldn't have planned for, or like, how would you have addressed this in a certain, like, you know, medicine, fucking whatever else, you can make plans of that. How do you actually address people feeling like they need spiritual fucking like guidance and getting led astray by fraudulent crazy fuckers and all this sort of thing in moments of crisis? I
mean, I grew up in the evangelical church, so it's something that I'm quite intimately familiar with. And I understand that, especially like in the Black community, it has a ton of not just spiritual relevance, but also like a community relevance in that regard. It's where people go to network. It's where people go to make friends. It's where people go to meet spouses. It's basically like the hub of the community in that regard.
It's a collective reality.
Yeah, it's a collective reality. And that's the thing is we talk a lot about how you know, neoliberal capitalism and sort of the collapse of society that's happening because of it, only how it affects people in our generation, how we're all like atomized, like fucking goblins. But the boomers and, you know, they're being affected.
Alex Jones goblins is sorry.
In bed with the goblins.
They're being
in bed with the goblins.
They're being affected by it too. The older generation who are so used to having social commons, like actual tangible social commons where they go and they gather and they meet, they're being affected by this atomization too, and that leaves psychological room for these mimetic hazards to really take root.
Well, I think that there's definitely, there's been a couple of interesting things crop up through this pandemic lockdown quarantine period. QAnon is definitely, one side of that. And I feel like this is the kind of, nihilistic side of it. And also, that side that was kind of, is more prone to this sort of the world is ending prophecies, sort of
the
side of
doomer
things.
thing.
For sure. And then, I think all of the alien stuff that's been released throughout the pandemic is kind of other side of that of there's something else out there, and the optimism side of the distraction of it. It's just how there's these two different camps of people that are distract themselves in either absolute fucking nihilism and shit that will just politically fucking drive you mental, or just stuff that is just so abstract and fucking not even really anything you can, just debating whether you should fuck a dead body. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you're not gonna fucking know. You know what I mean? It's the same fucking thing.
I'm even though I'm not an evangelical Christian anymore, I went through my sort of atheist phase to kind of get rid of the programming from that paradigm that I was raised in. And then I kind of found spirituality again, but in a different kind of way, a more kind of holistic way, one that sort of suited me and one that came from within me rather than something that I was programmed with and blah, blah, blah. And spirituality is a very important part of my life, and part of spirituality is transpersonal experience, which is, being able to transcend the self and feeling as if you're part of something larger than yourself and part of a larger community or part of a larger body of humanity in that regard. And that's something that's really, really intrinsic to all forms of spirituality and religion. And now that space has been eroded, there are all kinds of different spiritual pathologies. And QAnon is one of them, because it's not just evangelical Christians who are attracted to QAnon. A lot of people in the sort of new age paradigm have also started to move towards QAnon as well. And, lots of other paradigms too, your Hoteps, and a lot of them are finding this resonance.
I've seen some Hotep QAnon people. Actually.
Yeah, a lot of them are finding a lot of resonance within this paradigm, because it's a mimetic hazard that's seizing upon their atomized feelings and their hopelessness, and their inability to fight against those atomized feelings and hopelessness through shared experience and community.
It must be pretty easy if you're a Scientologist, because any sort of new virus that comes up is instantly just Thetans, bro. Obviously, we fucking told you. You've paid $10,000 for this. We've told you. It's fucking Thetans.
Did you read Dianetics or no? No? Well, that's why you don't understand this shit. I fucking get it.
Scientology has always been one of the more appealing religions to me, because it's just so on the nose bullshit that you kind of have to be on some level a little bit self-aware to be involved in it, possibly, or maybe just crazy, which is also appealing. The idea of just kind of going absolutely apeshit and just believing in something like that. But I think Scientology especially kind of, and this is totally an amazing atheist kind of dumb atheism comment, but Scientology does kind of expose the way that because you'll see Catholics and Christians be this religion's ridiculous, an alien comes from space and all this dumb stuff, but what they believe in is just as unrealistic to some extent.
Of course, they're just pastafarians with money, but it's
not about, I don't think for a lot of people, it's not really about the validity or the truth behind the doctrine.
No.
It's about what
otherwise multi-level marketing wouldn't work.
Yeah. It's about what it provides them in terms of meaning. And I don't think that, because the thing is, if you look on QAnon websites, most of what they post, the prophecies they post, don't come true. And it's very easily debunkable, because they'll say this exact thing is going to happen at this exact time, and then it doesn't fucking happen.
Yeah.
But the people don't challenge it. They just kind of move on and go on to something else anyway, because for them, it's not about the validity of the claims that are being made. It's about the fact that they have this shared sense of community around this specific thing, and the idea that they're making a difference by helping Trump drain the swamp, and they're, exposing pedophiles and satanic, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's what they're getting out of it. So that's the thing. I feel like a lot of liberals and a lot of the left especially try to sort of debunk, quote unquote, these conspiracies by being like, oh, well, the doctrine itself is dumb and you believe in dumb things. And it's like, it's not about the belief system itself. It's what is it providing for them? What are they getting out of it? What are they missing? It's the same thing with 12 Rules for Life. Like, people were like dunking on it and making fun of it without actually looking at what it was providing for the people who were, attracted to that kind of material. What spiritual aspect of them was it, like, filling? What part of them was it, resonating?
Missing daddy.
Yeah.
It was fulfilling.
The archetype of the daddy.
Did you see that tattoo someone got of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson on their leg?
No, I didn't.
No. I want to, though.
But I feel like that's a good example of like the missing daddy in a lot of men. Like, they want that kind of guidance.
Who doesn't want their daddy? You're not going to tell me that you don't want your daddy. You want your daddy. We all want
I do. I wish my father was like Jordan Peterson. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
honestly.
Same.
It's not just organized religions that have this sort of fervency around sort of an ideology, or even just sort of like a thing that fills the gaps. But I guess what I'm referring to is is it AA or AAA in America? Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, where it's just
AA.
It's fucking so like all based around spirituality and like giving yourself up to a higher power and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
and people like me, like, we're kind of like, when you first sort of learn about it, you're sort of quite skeptical, because you're sort of like, well, if you want to stop taking drugs or do something, you don't need to believe in fucking God or whatever God this fucking program's going to tell you it's going to save you. But then you kind of actually pick apart like what's it there for? And it's not really about any of that. It's more about having that sense of community and having someone there that you can fucking call upon and all of that kind of, and it's that same fulfillment that like a church would give you, but a church, you're going to feel like you're getting judged by all sorts of people, so you're in amongst a bunch of other fucking heroin addicts or whoever else to provide you that church. Like, it's kind
part of the reason why Alcoholics Anonymous have this sort of and in some cases I guess maybe it's pernicious, but it's because of the psychological role a quote unquote higher power fulfills for somebody who is going through that kind of withdrawal from drugs, because drugs are their god. It's the thing that gives life meaning for them, literally. And when you remove that, it can be very traumatic without having some form of thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a god. It could be a community. It could be meditation, some form of activity in that regard. But I guess that's the reason why that ethos was there in the first place. And it's difficult because this void of meaning right now that people are experiencing, especially because so many of our traditional authority figures like the church have been subverted. People are desperately kind of trying to cling to any form of meaning, whether it be Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, QAnon, or Extinction Rebellion, which I guess is one area that we'll go into in a second.
It's not good to, you said it's not good to try to debunk these people, and there's something like particular, like it's about the belief in the shared community. And in order to preserve that, they'll create a narrative in which they will, like, Q puts out this information and we're looking for the thing that's going to happen. But what happened is the outsiders found out about it and made sure it didn't happen.
But it's this endless sort of endless attempt to justify. It pushes them further into it because it's the endless attempt to justify
us versus them shit.
Yeah, but it justifies their group basically. And is this not what the left does as well? Does the left not do the same thing where it kind of creates its own weird internal logic, and it gets more,
where you fuck your cousin and all the dead bodies,
exactly. It gets more hostile and exclusive and deranged, and the more external pressure is kind of put on it, the more they kind of use these like deranged beliefs to kind of cling to one another, because what matters is the community, the in-group, the cohesive sense of and it's toxic because it's not real. It's a cohesive sense of community that people have, so that they feel like it's the only thing that's keeping the atomized despair at bay, basically feeling as if they're part of something.
The online left is kind of starting to remind me a little bit of like the ancient lost civilization conspiracy theorists, if you know what I mean. Because like you've now gotten to this point where you're like, oh, and so like fucking dead people and like your cousins are okay, and then their assumption is that you're already on board of all of this because of the assumption that you're on board of all of this other stuff beforehand. It's like when you start, like, I got this fucking book by the guy who did fucking Chariots of the Gods or whatever, and he's talking about some fucking thing in Peru, and he's just like, oh yeah, and so obviously we know that the fucking stuff was all made by aliens and that this was all this and that and this and that, and so from that we can make this conclusion. And you're like, well, so you've landed at this fucking conclusion from already like going so deep into like this crazy fucking ideology, and so now you've landed at I want to fuck dead people and my cousin. Like, that's kind of, I'm seeing the parallels a little bit. It's kind of weird.
But that's the thing, is it's kind of a natural norm when these sort of quasi neoliberal communities, because these aren't communities, we're all atomized like neoliberal subject. But like I said, it's like
they were bound
natural
by social capital rather than any actual real. Well, I mean, it's kind of a real social bond, but it's more. It's
not a real social bond at all, I would argue.
It functions. It's the thing that replaced them.
People who believe I'm not saying that there aren't people who genuinely believe that it's a real social bond, but that doesn't mean that it actually is a real social bond. Just because somebody like genuinely believes that they're part of this cohesive, collective struggle and they're bound in arm in arm with the comrades online, like that's not what it is. But like I was saying, it's sort of, it creates its own internal logic, becomes way more hostile than it needs to be in order to continually, perpetually justify itself. And, the easiest thing that there is to bond people together, is an outside enemy, basically.
Yes.
Which is why these groups are always in need of multiple enemies, threats, both external and internal, because that's kind of a major fixture of conspiracy thinking, is there are threats internally, there are threats externally, there are threats everywhere around every fucking corner. And it's kind of a thing that's used. Cults use this sort of logic.
And that's why when the things don't happen, it's fine, because it's the outside enemy that made it not happen.
Exactly. It's really pernicious, but it's a mimetic hazard, like I said. And the more vulnerable we are psychologically, the easier it is for these mimetic hazards to kind of take root and do their ugly work in our psyches. And, I feel like part of the scary thing about QAnon is the fact that people are losing family members to QAnon. People are, I've been reading articles, watching interviews with people who basically have family members who will talk about nothing else but QAnon, or who have left their churches, or who have completely abandoned, who think everybody is who doesn't agree with QAnon is this agent of the deep state, satanic pedophile fucking committee or whatever. But then again, you could say the same thing about people on the left, for instance, who also cut off every single social bond in their life.
Because they're all fascists.
Yeah. And they think that being a leftist equates to a personality. They have no interests. They have no real, passions outside of basically being hyper online and super invested in the discourse of the left. And I mean, it brings me to Extinction Rebellion, which, I know there are people who are going to be angry at me for saying this, but I think it's a liberal doomsday cult, especially because it's not rooted in material analysis. In fact, they're actually hostile to material analysis. It's you can't have environmentalism without class and material analysis. It's just posh gardening. Then it's not really anything that has teeth.
I've been playing like a lot of Crusader Kings 2 over the last 3 weeks, and one thing I've noticed is like you can't make fucking decisions about society and civilization that you're like fucking not advanced enough for yet, or that just your entire circumstance just will not allow that to happen, basically. So if I'm in capitalism and then I say I want no emissions by 2025, do you know what I mean? Like these are that's just you can't be there.
Like the arrangement of power is such that like the people who are actually causing the emissions, like you can't really force them. Like it's not something like they're making money off of energy. They're pumping, oil out of the ground. They're fracking. They're doing all this. You can't stop that.
Zero emissions will not be available till 2075 at the rate of this, plan of like where you want to focus your fucking attention on like how you're building fucking society. Like this is just like, it's not going to work. You can't make demands that are impossible within the current fucking system without literally advocating for an entirely different economic model or fucking system.
Who holds the power to make those decisions? You can't leverage something against them that's going to change it because it's too ingrained in everything.
Exactly. It's like it was kind of like we watched, was it the Great, where like Catherine the Great or whatever, and she comes in with all these ideas from Europe about like the Renaissance and that kind of stuff, like getting peasants educated essentially, and like these crazy ideas. And she brings all of this into Russia, and they're just there like getting rid of like basically the feudal system and fucking uplifting lords and shit like that. And they're just there like, what? That's like how our entire fucking society's structured. You can't just come in and say this would be great. Pfft, here you go. Like there has to be an amount of like, okay, well, this is either you've got a fucking plan and a revolution, and this is how you would make this happen, or there has to be a slow, gradual process in which the society can get to a point where they're going to make that sort of like acceptance and change.
One of the really weird things about Extinction Rebellion is their like strange performance art, which has been a fixture of doomsday cults of the past. I mean, during the Black Plague, there were the flagellants who went around beating themselves bloody in the streets to atone for the sins that they thought caused the plague. And I mean, recently in London, especially, Extinction Rebellion have been doing a lot of like bizarre, similar kind of apocalyptic performance art in that regard. And I feel like it's just kind of a thing. It's all of these different amalgamations together are just kind of like people's cry for meaning, people's cry for community and cohesion. And instead of people coming together in meaningful ways to create that community, they're coming together underneath the umbrella of these sort of mimetic hazards because they feel like it's the only excuse to be around other people, which is really fucking sad if you think about it. It's like the only excuse I have to basically be social, to be around other people, is to buy into this like crazy ideology or extreme ideology in order to basically have a community around myself. And I think that that's really sad. And it's because a lot of the places where you could just have those normal human interactions, a lot of the places that used to be kind of social commons no longer exist. And it's also getting worse. It's getting totally worse. Like one of the things that made me the saddest thing about COVID was there was a ton of, articles being written and sort of hot takes being made by film people about the death of cinema or the death of like the cinematic experience. And, people are sort of postulating that, cinematic experience will be this sort of boutique curated experience where you go to a little tiny cinema and watch like, old reruns. But for the most part, movies and new theatrical releases will be, streamed, and nobody's going to, the cinema experience is not going to be something that people seek out anymore. And like one of my earliest memories was seeing Lord of the Rings when they first came out with my brothers, and that kind of communal experience of being in the movie theater with a bunch of people who are seeing this fucking amazing like achievement in cinema together for the first time and being completely blown away by it. It's just not the same kind of experience that you would have on your own on your couch. There's an energetic feedback between you and the film and you and the audience and everybody who's around you that you just don't get. And seeing these just things that we've taken for granted because they were just natural and normal to us getting eroded away, it makes me sad.
God, you sound like such a boomer, Angie.
I know.
Just watch it on Netflix and be happy. Oh, I remember when the silence turned into talkies, and they were brilliant. Like, none of the kids give a shit, okay? They want to see Endgame again and again and again on Disney Plus for fucking $10 a month. They don't want anything else.
No, it's not their fault.
Are you going to pull a Scorsese now and be like...
It's not their fault, though. That's what they know, so I'm not going to make it an individual critique. It's what they know. It's not their fault, and it's also what the market is providing for them at the end of the day. So, like, whatever.
I mean, once again, it gets back to the whole atomization issue. Like, what we're talking about is a communal experience in which, you know, people are all together, witnessing, experiencing, having thoughts, leaning over to each other, going, "Oh my God, I don't know." But and the, you know, where it's going is, you know, people in a living room looking at a thing that they decided every single aspect about when I'm going to watch it, what I'm going to eat with it, what I'm going to do after, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's fully like you're alone and you're doing exactly your own program, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that there will always be a space for the cinematic experience because there are just too many old people with lots of money that want to have that. So it will always be around for at least for kind of the rest of my lifetime.
Also, there's theaters that are basically bars now. So
if I'm honest, I could see this being a massive fucking benefit. Because if you've been to a fucking cinema, like an Odeon or a View or, I don't know, what they got in America, an AMC and stuff like that, they're fucking garbage. Like, the sound system doesn't fucking work half the time. The projection's all fucked up. Like, I'm not paying $20 for a piece of shit fucking cinematic experience. If at this point now I go to a smaller cinema and it's one that's cleaned every time and it's fucking taken care of,
it's not just
then you get a better fucking time out of it.
It's not
so
just,
it could be good.
Number one, it's not just about the technical competency of the picture. The shared experience of it is also what is part of the reason you go to the cinema. The ritual, the ritual of buying the popcorn, the ritual of the sticky fucking seats and the sticky floors. Like, there's a ritualistic aspect. It's like the community.
Okay,
it's like the community.
If you've like Jake, have you never went to see a movie that's like a funny movie or like a scary movie where like the audience is like laughing and screaming and like it's fun. It's like it
of
really
course I've been
adds
to
to
comedy movies and I like that. But like that like so like most films I would go to see at the cinema aren't comedy movies. Comedy movies are the sort of movies I reserve for YouTube or for Netflix or whatever. When I go to the cinema, I'll go and watch The Hateful Eight. I'll go and watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, I was lucky enough. I got to go to the premiere of that at Leicester Square, like for tech people and whatever. Like, that was fucking awesome. Seeing it in this massive theater. Like, I love that. But you know what? The part of that experience that isn't the bit that gets me fucking hard, it's hearing everyone else laugh. Like, I don't give a shit. I want to watch a big fucking screen in the dark, and I want to have the fucking sound move all around me. I don't give a shit about the sticky floors or fucking people. Just give me the fucking epic cinematic experience.
Listen, it's because you're a fucking consumer. And for me, I don't care about whether the projectionist is on point. I don't really care about whether the cinema screen is... I don't even care about whether the fucking sound is calibrated properly. I just like the ritual and the experience of going to the cinema.
It's like going to church.
Yeah, it's like going to church for me.
I don't like, I'm not a consumer in that regard, okay? And I don't, it's not like I want to, it's not that I want to fucking curate something, but for me, it's like, if you're going to fucking do something and you're going to charge people money for it, do a fucking good job of it. Like, that's the only thing. It's the same thing when we went to fucking...
the fact it's kind of janky is part of the appeal.
No, there's a little charm there,
I absolutely hate that. Unless I'm watching like an old 80s film or something, I fucking hate that, absolutely.
Well, also, your job is also making things sound correct, though, so like I kind of get where you're coming from on it.
It's a goblin.
It's like when we lived in Fulham.
In bed with the goblin.
When we lived in Fulham, and there was that fucking Becky's Pizza place.
Yeah.
Why would you open a fucking pizza restaurant if you can't even make a pepperoni pizza?
It's just your weird.
It's just like, if you're gonna do something, do it. Put your fucking heart into it. Do it. Do a good job of it.
This is just like your weird pedantic weirdness. But anyway, back to the original point of what we were saying. Like, the point I'm trying to make is that human beings, we need excuses to be around each other because we're fucking weird and we're awkward and we are insecure and we're vulnerable, and at the core of everything, we're all very deeply frail. Like, no matter whatever facade anyone tries to put on. At the core of every single human being is like a very deep fragility.
A white fragility.
A very white fragility. A very white fragility. And every human being is vulnerable in that sense, and we need to invent excuses to be around each other. I mean, I feel like that's half of the reason why our rituals exist, whether that be going to church or you know, going to school, or going to the cinema, or going to a bar, or you know, going anywhere, or
looking up the insane thing that Q has said.
We need excuses to be around each other, and sometimes those excuses are benign excuses. Sometimes those excuses are really edifying, like life fulfilling, kind of life affirming excuses, and sometimes they're incredibly terrible excuses that are rooted around really dangerous or perverse ideologies. But the community,
fucking cousins,
you know, and that's you were talking about science.
Let's gather around that.
You were talking about Scientology earlier, Ashley, and I feel like that's part of the reason why a lot of people stay. Like if you watch those documentaries about Scientology, most of them don't actually believe in the tenets of Scientology, but they're really in deep because all of their social bonds and their economic bonds are also tied into this organization, because it's like capitalism within capitalism. It operates like a whole separate state within the state, a whole separate kind of economic system within an economic system. So they're in a whole world.
And once you get to Sea Org, you can just fuck anyone.
Yeah, you can just, you know.
If you're the hub man, or if you're fucking, what's his name? I can't even, was it David Miscavige or whatever the fuck? Like that super sketchy guy that blatantly like killed his wife and is like hiding in international waters. Yeah.
Yes, David Miscarriage.
Oh my God, what a crazy motherfucker. Like that's one of those guys that you look at him in the face and you're just like, you could tell you were going to do something like this, you know, a long time ago. This has been written on those eyes.
It's true.
For fucking 40 years. You could see that.
Well, and like if you leave the church, you'll have like crazy people outside of your house harassing you from the church, and
they'll follow you through the airport. Remember that one person who was talking about that?
Have you ever actually encountered any Scientologists in the real world?
I have, yes.
So like I actually, you did, didn't you? But like I used to pass literally them every day on the way to work. Well, like when going to work was still a thing. And like the level of fucking crazy in their eyes is just beyond. Like it's just vast deepness of like, oh yes, come.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's fine. Come take the personality test. You'll do great. It's fine. And you're just like,
have you seen the Peep Show episode, which is basically making fun of Scientology?
Oh yeah.
It's literally just like that. Come take the personality test, and they both. Wait, no, it's
Mark.
It's just like these guys hand out free personality tests outside Oxford Circus like every morning, and like every morning for what now 4 years. I say, no thanks, mate. Like, and you'd kind of think like at this point, you know, I know there's a lot of people, my dude, but I have literally said things to you multiple times.
You have to know by now.
These 4 years of like, the first time I'm a little bit like, you know, oh, dude, why are you out here trying to give people this crazy shit? Like, you know, you got better things to do. You should go home. You know, fuck this. And then obviously they give you the robot like, oh, you're one of those bad ones, aren't you? And then you just kind of, okay, all right. And I remember being in like a bad mood one day and coming home and they're trying to give me this fucking personality shit again. I was just like, listen, man, just fuck off. And getting really mad at me. So it's like, he definitely fucking remembers me next time. And then he came and gave like, offers me it again. And
the hot dog stand guy knows you after you go 3 times.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, exactly.
Well, I mean, another really strange phenomenon that's been going on has been the anti-COVID lockdown protests. And they've occurred like all over the world. But recently there was one that happened here in the UK. And Piers Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn's brother, was there. And he was like one of the organizers of it. And, you know, David Icke was also one of the key speakers at it, and it was this really big protest out in Trafalgar Square that attracted a lot of people. But again, you know, it kind of the response of like the liberals and sort of the left was like, oh, look at these fucking crazy people, they're all going to get COVID, they don't believe in like facts and logic and reason. And it's like, Well, really and truly, it's not about facts and logic and reason. It's really about the fact that they intuitively understand that the world around them is fucked up, but there are no real political avenues for them to express that frustration. So again, a mimetic hazard comes and fills the void, as it usually does. And it was really interesting though, because a lot of their concerns, if you actually look at the concerns of the people who are anti-COVID protesters, they're not obviously rooted in reality, but they're valid in the sense that they're tapping into real anxieties that we all have. The fact that we're not being given information that is coherent a lot of the time. There was also the fact that Piers Corbyn was fined £10,000 for being an organizer of the protest, yet when there were Black Lives Matter protests happening in London, those protesters were not fined. And that kind of stuff adds fuel to the fire. But when I was watching footage from the protest that was happening, there was a certain fervor that these people had, and a certain kind of joie de vivre, this sort of spirit. They had a spirit of I wouldn't necessarily call it optimism, just energy that you don't necessarily see when you're looking at protests that the left are doing, where it's just kind of performative a lot of the time.
And I can't really, because I know it happened in a couple of places in Europe, and I can't speak for, what it's been like in Germany, and like how the messaging from the government's been in Germany, from all the numbers and stuff, and from like the stuff that you see outside of Germany. It looks like they've certainly handled it a lot better than we have. In the UK, but there's this one woman that actually made like a shitload of sense. She was there. There was quite a few people they interviewed on the Sun video I saw on YouTube or whatever. It was they obviously were fucking rambling off some utter nonsense on a couple of them.
Some fun stuff.
Oh yeah, some fun stuff for sure. Some fun folks you want to have at the party, definitely. But there was this one woman that's just like, look, I just don't understand. Like fucking, you're telling me you can't be within 2 meters of people, but at the same time you're encouraging people to get into enclosed spaces like restaurants and giving them money off to go out and eat and all of this stuff, and you're basically the government just making all of these laws and suggestions around it which are completely contradictory. So why should I even believe that this fucking thing is real? And you're just like, well, I followed you A, B, C, and then bang at the conclusion you drop off there at like COVID is fake.
Yeah.
Well, but you're absolutely right. You can't have all of these contradictory fucking things and schemes going on all at the same time whilst you're trying to interfere. Like, I understand more in the UK about why those people feel the need to go out and protest and have that emotion around it. But as I said, in Germany, it seems like it's been a bit more crystal clear and they've been less about that. I feel like there's just some Nazis there that just want to have a little bit of a jump up and have a fun time.
We end up with authority that's sort of disseminating all of these mixed messages. Like, you also have different heads of state in different countries saying different things. It's not even necessarily like your state. Like, you may see like Donald Trump, even though you're from like Germany, and you see Donald Trump saying, we're doing this, it's this, blah, blah, blah. And you're like,
yeah, that's true.
Actually, I don't know. But anyway, it ends up creating this sort of confusion. And I mean, people, I think, are gradually more and more distrusting authority anyway over the last few decades, because like they've done so much to just strip away elements of society in various, like in the UK, for instance, they've privatized aspects of the NHS, which that's something that if you asked somebody 10 years ago, they go, no, that'd never fucking happen. But you end up with all of these people who are rightfully mistrusting of authority, expressing it in a manner that isn't necessarily coming from, a materialist analysis. Obviously, it's coming from like a suspicion, or like maybe they heard a rumor on the internet, or QAnon said something, or blah, 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 just etc. It's legitimate concern, but it's nonsense.
It's nonsense to be met with nonsense. So like you're like angry, and then someone like David Icke comes and tells you that it's the lizard globalist fucking whatever, and we all need to come together to defeat this and whatever. And you're just like, look,
and he doesn't benefit from it at all.
Oh no, it's not like he's literally got a book out right now,
or anything like that,
called literally The Answer. It's just a black book with like big white letters on the front of it that just says the answer, and then literally
Sounds like The Secret. That's the best thing I like about that.
I think there's even a quote from David Icke underneath it saying like, "I've been saying this for years," or some crazy dumb shit like that as well. And like,
I've been saying this for years.
Like, this is the bad thing about it, because you can see there's all this anger there, and it's not really ideologically kind of fueled in any way. It's just an upset, and like, this doesn't make sense, and a confusion and a frustration.
The world sucks, and I'm mistrusting of the people who have created this world.
Exactly, but it is like a really dangerous time, because I feel like it's like someone like a David Icke can then or a Q or whoever the fuck can then rally enough people to be like, yeah, it's this and that. But I just don't know what then the political goal is of these people. Like with Q, it's a little bit more, I guess, straightforward, that they think that Donald Trump's going to drain some sort of swamp or something. With David Icke, it's kind of less clear. But I don't know. And same with Piers Corbyn. Like, it's a shame that like one of the greatest fucking, you know, people even get funny when you call Jeremy Corbyn a leftist, but fucking whatever. Greatest socialist kind of, you know, Labour Party politician in the last however many decades. Gets his fucking name dragged through because his brother is spouting off about fucking 5G and coronavirus.
Oh, but they did drag Jeremy Corbyn's name. They did drag Jeremy Corbyn's name, you know, because of this. Like, basically what happened was they were like, oh, Piers Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn's brother, spreads anti-Semitic conspiracy theories just like his brother. Yeah. So they used it as an opportunity to fucking add salt to the wound of the
guilt by
defeat.
association.
Yeah, basically. And you know, it is really crazy, because I feel like there's going to be more of this kind of doomsday cult shit as we kind of progress further into this kind of very unstable political era that we're in. And I guess the advice that I would give to people is, in order to insulate yourself from memetic hazards, you know, or brainworms, which is a more fashionable way of saying it. It's you know, community and experience is like the best thing that you can do, even if it's like through actually having friends online that you share. Even if you can't like meet people in meet space, because of obviously we're limited now, but having friends online who you share certain interests with that are outside of anything really ideological, that's a healthy thing to have.
And that those relationships are not mediated by metrics in some way.
Yes.
That you're talking directly to them.
Yeah, directly to a person, you know, who is you know, these are the kinds of things that can help shield you. And at the same time, if you know anyone in your life who is infested with brainworms or has some kind of mimetic virus, that's the area where my witch powers are not strong enough. I do not know what to do because if you ever talk to any of these Q people, it's really like, it's almost impossible to kind of get past that. Once the brainworms have taken hold, I don't know. It's difficult. It doesn't mean they're irredeemable, but like, I don't think it's something that you can redeem in one conversation or even multiple conversations.
No.
Well, it's like cult programming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think if this has taught us anything, it's that Marshall Applewhite was absolutely correct in everything that he said. That, you know, it is time for recycle. It's a time for a new beginning. You know, everything's cyclical. Heaven's Gate, you know, they kind of had a thing going there, and they're kind of right. Maybe this is the end times, and we should all just kind of jump on board. This is a kind of
really obscure cult leader, Jake. Not everyone's going to know what you're talking about.
Like,
Not everyone knows who Marshall Applewhite is, or Heaven's Gate, or what their doctrine was. And like, you always
that
do
sounds
this.
like such a Southern name, like American Southern.
Marshall
That's
Applewhite.
Marshall Applewhite right there. Why, Marshall Applewhite?
It really does. This just goes to show where Jake's brain is at like half of the time. And this is the shit that I have to deal with. I have to protect Jake from mimetic viruses, like, now that we're in quarantine.
We need to all collectively kill ourselves, us in the low society.
Yes.
Family wearing matching sneakers.
Fantastic. Adidas. We all put on our Adidas tracksuits, our chains, our white bucket hats.
At the end of the premiere of the 1,000th episode, we'll all simultaneously consume cyanide together with all the Low Society for supporters around the world.
I'll like pretend to drink the cyanide so that you guys die and I can take over and become queen of the podcast.
You can tell the story about how we were all crazy and you were just like stuck with us and didn't know
I can write the book. I can write the New York Times bestseller about the cult podcast that, you know,
that you finally escaped.
That I finally escaped.
That's a very Tenacious D move of you, Angie. I poisoned your wine.
Well, thank you for listening to this great episode of Low Society. I'm spreading a memetic hazard right now. Go to our fucking Patreon. Give us money. Tell other people to listen to the podcast and also give us money. Spread the word. Make sure you leave 5 stars. Go to our Reddit. Follow us on Twitter. Do all of the things that help us out. And we really appreciate it when you do. We love you guys. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.